Welcome to Sitting on the Stoep, Being at Home. My name is Merle Levin, and I'm recording this from a little town called Hermanus in the Western Cape of South Africa. It's a beautiful sunny winter's day here, and I am sitting on the stoep looking out on a very still lagoon. There's no wind, the birds are enjoying the abundance of fynbos in the area that are blooming this year because of the incredible amount of rain we've had. And this just seems like the perfect moment to open up this new chapter of my podcast. So welcome, and thank you so much for investing this time to join me. Sitting opposite me is Simone. I'm very deeply grateful that she, with all her social media and technological acumen, has agreed to help me get this project on the road.
I think I'm the lucky one who gets to sit on the stoep with you, Merle.
Okay, so we are enjoying sitting on the stoep together.
Yes.
We don't know where this is going to go to. We just know that we're embarking on a journey.
Yes. So some key things for our listeners who can't see us. We have a 30-year age gap. So we thought that would also be really interesting in our conversations.
Yes.
You know, as quickly as things change and as quickly as we move, some things just are universal truths and universal lessons. And, you know, Merle's insights into these life things have been such a guidance for me. So I think these podcasts are a great way to share that.
Yes, Simone has 2 young children, and I have grown-up grandchildren. So we definitely are at different phases, but the universal issues endure, and we both have a common affinity to meditation, to Buddhism, to self-development and self-reflection. And that's why I thought this title, Sitting on the Stoep, Being at Home, is appropriate for where I am at my stage of life. So Simone is still dashing around, developing her career, and she comes to join me when we sit on the stoep together and ruminate.
Yay. So the first thing we should probably touch on is how we came up with the name, Merle. And you had a big life change. And this theme has been calling you for quite some time, the idea of being at home.
Yes, it has. I had a very active career pre-COVID. I was global facilitator, teacher. I worked for 20 years facilitating silent retreats and creative writing workshops in Norway, France, Italy, the UK, Canada, Israel, and South Africa. So a lot of my time was spent traveling and teaching, facilitating, preparing. It was very busy. And I loved the work. I loved the students. I loved working in an Italian monastery twice a year for 20 years, facilitating silent retreats, watching how the power of silence brings transformation and clarity in people's lives. But in my heart, I just longed to be home. I think I'm not a natural traveler. I love being at home. I love being still and quiet and reflective. And COVID, what I call the god of COVID, put a red marker through all my career plans and put us in lockdown, shut all the external stimulation down, and suddenly I found myself sitting on the stoep of a beach house we had purchased in South Africa, close to Hermanus, thinking we would be here 3 months a year maximum. And then suddenly lockdown happened. We found ourselves wintering through an uninsulated, extreme winter in a very cold house that was never designed for winter living. And with no access to warm clothing or anything because all the shops were closed, and we had just arrived here for a summery 3 months on the beach. So that was very different. And that first lockdown in COVID caused a huge life change, which I will probably unpack in the podcasts to come. But for now, the theme of coming home is a big one for me. The career has ended. The complicated life has been simplified to a degree, and I probably will go into that as well. We had lived in Canada for 40 years, and we just recently sold up everything there and have moved back to South Africa permanently, and slowly landing ourselves in one place. I say we. I've been married to my beloved husband for 53 years. We've led quite an interesting life, living in different countries, pursuing our own careers, coming together and then being apart sometimes for months on end as we pursued our own interests and careers. And for us, it's been a formula that's worked very well in our marriage. I have 2 beautiful children who live in South Africa and 2 grandchildren. So that's a little about me. I would like to keep the emphasis on this podcast, not so much on me, but more on what I have to share of my experience that could be of benefit to you in some way. I don't see myself as a wise old woman. I see myself actually more as a dangerous old woman because at some level I feel like I'm going through adolescence. I'm breaking out and discovering new parts of myself. I'm 74 years young. My husband is almost 80. And we feel as young as we did when we agreed to get married after knowing each other just for a few weeks.
Oh.
So we've always had that kind of reckless, crazy, throw the chips to the wind approach to life. And we've met some hard knocks as a result, where our enthusiastic recklessness has reaped disastrous results. But we've also had a lot of luck And we've done things we would never had done had we been too cautious.
So, Merle, because I have the benefit of knowing that backstory and a little bit more, from an outsider's perspective, it seems change that not necessarily comes easily to you, but you manage to go with the flow, and that's led to a lot of adventure and obviously also obstacles, but you're a very resilient woman and a very resourceful woman. So for those of us who are not as resilient and resourceful when it comes to change or accepting change, or perhaps we avoid it altogether, is there like a specific tool or a mindset or a hint of some kind of action you would suggest people could take when faced with extreme change?
Well, change, we're creatures of habit. I see how a little change to the things I do habitually affect me deeply. So I'm not so easy with change. I'm very earthy. I'm a Taurus. I'm a Chinese ox. I actually am not the kind of person that finds it easy to make change. But at the same time, I'm very aware of the impermanence of form, that everything is changing all the time. And I listen to the call. For example, my husband Jeff and I were very comfortable in a lovely little flat in Cape Town. We had a view of the ocean, and a view of Table Mountain, the whole Atlantic seaboard. We had a really lovely apartment, the kind of place people would walk into and go, wow, this is amazing. And we were happy there, and everything was going well. And then for some unknown reason, I woke up one morning and said, I think we need to move. We need to sell our flat. And the kind of chemistry between Jeff and I is that we listen to each other. We listen to the frequency, the energy of an impetus that sometimes is very slight. And so he said, why? We love this place. Why do we need to move? And so we helped each other unpack the why. And we often do this when we're walking. We go on long walks together. And as we walk, we ask the questions, we talk, we listen, we allow whatever wants to come up from the subconscious to come up. And we give each other the space to talk things through very deeply. And what we realized was that at that time, for whatever reason, being in a flat in Cape Town was not nourishing us at a soul level. And so we put our flat up for sale. The agent said, don't, because there was a big water crisis in Cape Town at that time. And they said it would never sell, and people are not investing in Cape Town. But we'd had this impetus, and we trusted. And we thought, okay, even if it takes a year, we didn't have a plan B. We weren't going toward anything. We were just listening.
Wow.
And the flat sold in 2 weeks. And now what? Then we started looking. But unbeknown to us, in the future, COVID was looming and lockdown. We found this beautiful beach house overlooking the lagoon on an open piece of land with lots of space and silence and fynbos and nature and all the water birds. And we just said yes. And actually, when we did all the calculations of what we sold our flat for and what we purchased the beach house for, there was just a differential of 9 rand. So it was as if the energy was so right. It just left one property and sailed through the stratosphere and landed on another. And we felt guided to this place. So the sitting on the stoep aspect that I'm touching into, this being at home, is about being still, listening, observing, being a witness to what's happening in the world, because there are cycles, there are larger cycles at work all the time. And this is connected to change. This is how we move with change, is when we move out of the strong attachment to what is known and open up our hearts to the potential of what is possible.
I love that. I mean, I think there's a lot of talk about the responsive and reactive states, is getting out of that reactive mind and the monkey mind and then getting into a space where you respond. But I like the third step of the listening. There's a step between the reactive and the responsive. It's not just switching. It's giving that time to listen and then respond. It's giving that time to take a breath and then respond. You know, I think, I mean, I know for me, you know, in practice and stuff, I feel like it should be one or the other, especially with my kids. You know, they can be so, bless them, they can be so triggering, you know, children. And it is not training myself or educating myself on some kind of intellectual level enough to be like, oh, you know, when they are upset, you meet their needs and then that's a response and then you become a responsive parent. It's not. It's that what you've touched on now, that's that time in between. And it's fine-tuning your ability to listen. And that's a practice in itself and a tool. So
it's such a practice. So listening, it's a quality, I think. I sometimes feel very sad that I don't know how many children these days have silence in their lives. But I know for me, sitting on the stoep implies the sitting practice, which in Buddhism is either on the cushion when it's like formal meditation practice, but then there's off the cushion, which is daily life. And then I'm adding the, you know, rocking chair on the stoep.
With the fireplace,
or sitting by the fire, and just being completely content to listen and observe and feel and sense into, because we respond to form, we respond to issues, we respond to emotions so quickly, but actually what is happening in an energetic field around us, in the quantum field, in the etheric field, in the whole energy around us, has a lot of information to give us. The future is unknown to us. We only know the present. Most of the time, I think, from my own experience, we're living in the past. So we're not even experiencing the present. The more we experience this present moment, the more the capacity opens up to sense what's pressing in from the future, because there are signs. The future is unknown, but it gives many hints, and we only get a sense of those hints when we're very still and fully in the present. So, for example, with the selling of the flat in Cape Town, we didn't know that there would be a COVID pandemic. But the sensing that we got from the deep listening was that being in a city was not nourishing us at a soul level. So it didn't say, yoo-hoo, get ready, there's going to be lockdown. You're not going to want to be cooped up in a flat during lockdown. We got the sensing of the nourishment. What nourishes you? And then when we focused on that, we realized we want to be on the earth. We want to be in nature. We didn't know why. We didn't know where. We didn't know how. We didn't know what price, nothing. It was just moving with the current of a sensing process. And I mean, this changes every day. This is what changes. So right now, I'm sitting on this beautiful stoep, overlooking the lagoon and the mountains and the nature and all the birds, and it's paradise. It's exquisite. But I need to listen. What is the future calling for us? Is this the place to be? Maybe there's a sensing of something else that's needed. And to be open to that, because attachment, I get attached very, very easily. So I think this is what the teachings of Buddhism have helped me with a lot, is to kind of unclench my fingers on what I'm holding so closely onto.
Thank you, Merle. I want to ask, how does the listening and sitting on the stoep, how do you differentiate between that very intuitive voice that maybe sometimes you're going, that's absolute nonsense, like what are you talking about, versus listening to your ego? Because leaving this beautifully curated flat, your friends are all thinking, Merle and Jeff have ticked these boxes, they have arrived, we're always trying to arrive somewhere, aren't we? So, from external people, oh, they've arrived, they've got everything, they're living this global existence, and then you still, through the ego, going, Merle, are you crazy? This is perfect, this is what people work their whole lives for, and you still could hear that. That's training, right? Is that giving yourself the time to sit on the stoep?
I think you're right. I think it's training. It's training, a musician has to train their ear to hear the fine nuances between the notes. Or I don't have the ability, but I've always been completely in awe at people who can listen to a piece of music and know who the conductor is of the orchestra. I have a friend who has that fine-tuned ability. Or wine tasters who can taste a few drops of wine and taste, berries and lavender and the kind of water and the area the grapes were grown in, and know all of that and connect to essence in that way, that kind of fine-tuned capability. I don't have any of that. I'm kind of like fingers and thumbs and, walk on the lawn with heavy boots. But I'm practicing because I know that capacity is possible. And I happen to have a talent, I think, at work, and this is, many people have told me this, of working in the realm of finding home in terms of property. So I'm connected to that. We have lived in amazing places and bought the most incredible places with very little money, because it's never about the cost. It's always about what supports me, what supports our life. If something supports your life, then it'll happen at the right time. But you have to be patient, and you have to have trust and timing and all the rest of it. So when we sold our beautiful penthouse apartment in Cape Town, we didn't know where we would go. We just trusted that the right place was there.
And do you think because, so the physicality of finding home, do you think because emotionally and spiritually, like you said, you are so in touch with that feeling, that's why when it manifests physically, it seems so right for you, because you do the work in that other space almost. Yes. And then little moments of silence is helping us train the spiritual or the emotional or the other realm or whatever people's belief systems are. When you're in tune with that and you've almost done the work on that layer, when it happens in the physical, you feel more able to handle it or approach it or look at it. Do you think?
Yeah, I think training, well, I'm in training now. I work with a personal trainer and I go to Pilates, and you're absolutely right. Jeff and I, we work at being physically active as much as we can, and we realize that there was a lot more we could have done in our 40s that would have benefited us now. But you begin training at the stage you're at. That's what you have available to you. It takes energy, takes investment of time. Sitting on the stoep is actually an investment of time. It's not a waste of time, because it depends how you sit. I sits and I thinks, and sometimes I just sits.
Yes.
And there is something wonderful to giving ourselves the space to just sit. It's a kind of training. It's a training of the mind to slow down. Because, as you say, the ego is very loud. It has big stick and keeps repeating its commands over and over and over. The sensing part, in my experience, is quite a soft voice that easily diminishes itself. So I have to make space for that. And that soft voice sometimes gives an indication that seems completely irrational. And that's when the ego rises up and says, oh, come on, don't talk rubbish. Don't sell your flat. But the more I trust that, it often comes up a wonderful, I've worked with many great teachers. I have sat at the feet of deeply enlightened beings who've been an enormous help to me on my path. And one of my teachers has always used to say, it's the true sensing comes in the first flush of feeling before the ego comes marching in. It's a very soft first inkling of something. Virginia Woolf explained it when she spoke about her writing process. She says you move from nothing to something. It's so subtle. And I practice that in my writing. I have this wonderful tool that, I'm sure we'll talk about in time. What a fantastic tool that is, because that is the process of moving from nothing to something. And the more you trust that, it kind of trains the sensing. And then I practice it in the supermarket when I'm choosing what I want to buy, what nourishment I want to give my family. I go more with the sensing than with the preference. When I drive, I take the route. Sometimes that's not the usual route because I sense into it. I trust it. I say, okay, guide me. My husband has the most fantastic intuition. I mean, we will arrive in a city we've never been into, and he just drives, and he doesn't use a GPS. He just uses his inner GPS. So it is like a little guiding force. And this is an aspect of being that we all have. And as you say, it takes training. It's like exercising a muscle. And the training is in small things, overriding habits. That's a whole topic we could talk about, that I used to give lectures at in my courses, called Creating New Habits. So, we have lots to share and talk about as we sit on the stoep.
Yes. So as a takeaway, what are a little bit of homework, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've got to separate ourselves. Not have to. It would be lovely if we could separate ourselves from the idea that a moment on the stoep, whatever that looks like to people, if it's walking in your garden, if it's running a bath and actually closing the door and being alone, is not a luxury and it's not selfish. It's something that's available to all of us,
Yes.
The idea of going on beautiful retreats and buying these incredible books, and you can see how that sometimes that spiritual lifestyle becomes an item of luxury, even though it's supposed to be so monastic and all these things. And if it's anything like the retreats I've been on, you eat better food than you've ever eaten at home, and it's this luxury of the space and this time, but you can do that in your own home.
Yes, and this is about being at home. It's lovely to go away and go on holiday, but I'm at a point in my life I don't really have a desire to leave home. I'm much more focused on how to make my retreat at home. And that starts with getting up in the morning and just introducing aspects of the day that are nourishing spiritually, physically, nutritionally, sensually. Just actually, as you say, I love what you said, that it's not a luxury. It's not a waste of time. If just sitting on the stoep, or one tip I will give. Many of us begin our day with a morning coffee or a morning cup of hot water and lemon, or a morning whatever. The way we introduce food or liquid into our body after the fasting through the night. Make that a moment. Don't look at your phone. Don't watch the news. Don't do it with distraction. Enjoy your morning coffee fully and completely. Just that can become a practice. So maybe that's the homework.
I love it. I love it. So practice some sensing over preferences, trust your inner GPS, and just, carve out those small little moments, and it becomes something so much bigger, doesn't it?
Yes.
Thank you, Merle.
Okay.
I love that. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.